core part of the Suzuki philosophy is the triangle between the parent, teacher, and child. And this is really critical for teaching a young child how to play violin. The teacher's job is to really create the world of violin playing for the child to step into, to set the values, to deliver the technique. And the job of the parent is to take that world home and recreate it every evening with your child. Your child's job is just to be a child. Woody Allen said that 80% of success is just showing up, and this is really true for violin practice. When you make it a priority to practice every evening, even if it's only for a little while, your child comes to expect that routine and they get used to it. This is the best way to ensure that your child is making good progress and has a really positive experience of practice.
What I felt like really worked for me is, okay, each night you have, currently right now, 30-45 minutes with Aaron. And I usually like to put the, whatever he has most trouble with, I urge him to practice that first. Like with us, you know, in the beginning it was lines and spaces. He didn't like doing it, it was hard on him. And I knew if I left it at the very end, toward the end of the practice session, I would not get 100% of his attention span. So actually I moved it to the front of the lesson at the very beginning, and I think that worked really well. And then at the end of the lesson, I would let him do whatever is easiest for him, like, you know, playing like a delightful song. You know, end it with a delightful song, end it with something fun, something he likes to, like, that I know he likes to do. So that way he has like a more memorable impression of his practice lesson with me. So that's what I've been doing with him. And then also, recently what I've done with him is, you know, I'll give him a choice. Well, Aaron, here's the list of musical assignments that your teacher would need you to practice on, A, B, C, D. Let me know what order you want me to do them in. And that gives him like a sense of empowerment. You know, like, it's not mom dictating the practice session all the time. Now Aaron gets to have his say. So I've, you know, incorporated both methodologies when practicing with Aaron, and I think that's worked well so far for me.
Practicing every day sends the message to your child that practicing is an important priority for you, and your child is going to set their priorities according to yours. When you skip a day practicing, that sends the communication to your child that practicing is sort of something extra that you work in between other fun activities in your child's life. Just the way that working out when you feel like it is a recipe for canceling your gym membership 6 months from now, skipping days practicing is not a recipe for excellence and not something that you want to model for your child.
In the beginning, it was extremely frustrating for Aaron. Whenever you know, he would bow a note, it didn't come out the way he wanted to, and you know, he would cover his ears with his hands, you know, to give you know, a discouraging sign. And you know, his 2-year-old sister would do the same thing too, and she would give ugly faces whenever Aaron made not so perfect notes on his violin. But we got through it. we kept at it. So no matter, yeah, it's difficult, but I'm so glad that we did not give up. We did not let that discourage us, and we overcame it.
Skipping days in between practice is also going to erase some of the gains that you made in the previous practice session. When you spend Monday building a house, that house is still going to be there Tuesday morning when you come back. But when you spent Monday night learning a song and the child comes back to it on Tuesday night, that song is not going to be in the same place that you left it. And that's okay. You just need to continue reviewing that song and getting it natural and effortless until the child knows that song inside and out. If instead you wait until Wednesday to practice again, that song that you learned on Monday is going to be almost back where it started again. Your child is going to have a sense of frustration and discouragement, and they're going to internalize the message that working hard is not valuable and doesn't lead anywhere. This is the opposite of the message that you want to send.
I think it wasn't until the second semester that he eventually was able to play one complete song, Hot Cross Bun, without any spaghetti strings. I mean, his notes, of course, were off, but the fact that he didn't cross any strings when he was bowing, that was a winner for us, and that was, I think, the turning point for Aaron. He saw what he was able to do with his violin and his bow, and he enjoyed it. He was very impressed that, after working a whole semester, he was able to complete one full song on his own.
Of course, there are going to be days when you're tired or your child is tired, and that's a good day to have a shorter practice. The hardest part is always going to be opening the case, and sometimes that's true for your child and sometimes that might be true for you too. But being able to say that you practice for 10 minutes is a lot better than not practicing at all.
It also helped to choose the freshest moment of the day to practice and take advantage of a good moment and maybe do 5 minutes and then come back later and do 5 minutes, and you don't have to do it all at the same time is what worked for us.
See, even if I had like a long tiresome day at work, but if Aaron expressed interest and he urges me to practice with him, I jump out of my couch. I was like, okay, let's go, Aaron. So that gives me the inspiration. When I see excitement and when I see him initiated, that gives me all the energy and the strength in the world to just get up and practice with him. So I have to give him credit for that too. Days that I'm sluggish, I'm tired. If he's expressed interest in practicing, I'm all for it. So I can credit for that.
As you're preparing for the commitment of studying violin, you want to take a look at your family's activities. Unless you're homeschooling, evening time is very short, so you'll want to make sure that any other activities are limited to 1 or 2 evenings a week. This makes sure that your child still has time for family time and free time, but is able to get in practice time each evening. As you're getting ready to start violin lessons, you want to choose a specific place in the house that's going to be your practice area. This is a really important part of the routine because when your child goes into the practice space, they're mentally shifting gears and they're getting ready to focus. Whatever place you choose as the practice area should be cozy and enjoyable for the child to be in, but without too many distractions that are going to tug at their attention. You'll also want to think about when in the day is going to be the best time for you to practice with your child. And ideally this is going to be something that provides a strong built-in cue and that's going to be at the same time every day. For example, I knew that after I came home from school I could watch 2 cartoons and then it was time to practice. And this was early enough in the afternoon that I still had lots of time to play outside afterwards. Other solutions I've heard are having one parent practice with the child while the other parent makes dinner, or practicing right after dinner.
I have a daughter who's 2 years younger than Aaron. So when Aaron first started playing the violin, Aaron was 4 and Shannon was 2. So it was really important that I had, 15-30 minutes of quiet space, quiet time with Aaron. And the only way I was able to do that was that my husband took Shannon, my daughter, to another room, play with her, occupy her for that amount of time that I was able to spend it with Aaron. And, to give him credit, I would not have been able to be an effective, successful practice parent with Aaron if not for my husband's effort in keeping Shannon with him during that period of time.
The only time that I would really stay away from is later evening, partly because it feels like you're squeezing it in after everything is done, which gives it a lower perceived value, and partly because if your child is always tired when they're practicing violin, that sense of fatigue is going to become associated with the violin.
We would always practice after dinner, and dinner is at 6:15, and we're done by 6:30, 6:45, and I let him, play, relax with his sister for half an hour, and then so we would usually practice between 7:15, 7:30.
When your child is practicing, it's really important that you give them your undivided attention. Playing violin will be intrinsically enjoyable later, but right now they're going to be working very hard, and that relationship with you is going to be the primary thing that sustains them and makes the activity pleasurable. It would be better for you to do a shorter practice and really be with them rather than making dinner or checking emails and only being partially available. As a practice parent, you have a pretty big job to do. It is your responsibility to make sure that all of the activities that were covered in the lesson are mirrored in the home practice session. This includes not just activities that were introduced this week, but also activities from previous lessons, because your teacher will only be able to cover a subset of all of your activities in each lesson, but many of these activities will take several weeks to master. In general, keep practicing activities that were introduced in previous lessons until it's clear to you that your child has mastered it, or until your teacher says otherwise. You'll need to designate a loose leaf notebook to bring to the lessons each week. Part of your job in the lessons is to take detailed notes about everything that happens in the lesson. This is something that you'll continue to do even as your child gets older, because it's impossible for the teacher to write, play, and talk and also listen to your child all at the same time. Meanwhile, your child is absorbed 100% in whatever the task is that the teacher is asking them to do, so it's impossible for them to be able to generate a comprehensive list of everything that was done in lesson, even if they're highly motivated and organized. My highest achieving students are the ones whose parents continue to be involved well into their teenage years. And although they had to renegotiate that relationship on the way, it was really clear that they felt empowered by that collaboration and that they felt really supported and nurtured by their parents' participation.
And then Honest Teacher required the parents to go. So through high school, I was going to every lesson with her, taking notes, and I think that was huge to help me be part of her process, and just so.
And how did she feel about your being there?
It was great because, for her, there were times when maybe I made comments that she didn't appreciate, and then maybe later I was like, okay, sorry, I went too far there. But she liked the notes because I was just there as a note taker. But it really helped solidify the relationship between Carla, her teacher, and Anna and me. And I think it was really valuable. And there were times when I was, and then after she got out of high school, it was like, okay, you're on your own. And so there were times, especially in high school, when your kids don't want you around, that she didn't appreciate me being there. So. But because the teacher required it, then it wasn't on me. It was, and my role was not to teach; it was to take notes, so they could have their learning, and I was just the note taker.
Your teacher may ask you to submit a practice journal the night before each lesson. And the most important role of the practice journal is to really share any significant accomplishments that you had during the week and to provide a general overview of how practices went. practices were hard, then your teacher can respond to what your child might be going through. They may make assignments a little bit easier, or they might share a story about another student that can help validate your child's experience. If your child had a significant accomplishment during the week, your teacher can make sure to leave time for that in the lesson so that your child can share that accomplishment and feel proud of what they did. If possible, bring a recording device to each lesson. Even if you're very good at taking notes, things like bow strokes and new exercises and posture corrections are very difficult to capture in writing. Especially if your partner is doing some of the practicing with your child at home, having those videos will be especially important. During the lesson, mostly you want to observe quietly and avoid pulling the child's attention away from the teacher. Make a note in your notebook of any questions that you want to ask, and make sure to get clarification before the teacher moves on to the next activity. It's your job to be 100% clear on each assignment for the week so that when you're practicing with your child at home, you're coaching your child almost as well as the teacher herself. It may initially come as a shock to you how much detail goes into every tiny little skill of playing the violin. Now, if my only goal is to be able to play Irish Washerwoman, then getting all those tiny angles and nuances right is not such a big deal. The real question is, if you want your child to someday be able to play something really expressive, that's when you need all of those tiny little details to be just right. Because every bow stroke is a brush stroke in the painting, and you need to have perfect sensitivity in your touch. As you're working with your child at home, you want to bring a level of detail that is the same as what the teacher provides in lesson, because if your child goes a week with the banana thumb, that habit is already halfway to being formed, and you're still going to be dealing with that banana thumb 2 years from now. It's so much easier to catch the habit before it becomes a habit. Now, I'm not saying that you want to make your child miserable by stopping them every 10 seconds, but you do want to spend as much time as possible playing correctly and keep a watchful eye for any posture mistakes so that any potential bad habit doesn't last long enough for it to actually get a toehold. I spent some time encouraging your inner tiger parent, and I want to take just a moment and add a little bit of softness to the message, because part of nurturing excellence is also making sure that your child is having an overall very positive experience. Especially in the beginning, they're not going to love every sound that comes out of their violin, which means that it's especially important for you to creatively find ways to make their practice enjoyable for them. Now later on, once they start to sound mature and be able to play expressively, that's when that intrinsic joy of making music on the violin is going to be more present for them.
Anna, my kids are very different. And so for me, I would be like, what works for each child? And for Anna, it was always fun. She loves to have fun and do games, and she's high energy, and it always, so we might make up stories. She loves stories to go with the music that didn't always have words, a pre-made story. Mm-hmm. So we might make stories, and then we'd listen, or we would walk around the room and clap or march to the beat, and then sit down and play it. And one of my very favorite memories, and I can't remember the piece, but it was in book 1, there was a scale, and we have some stairs in our house, and so I had an empty, empty wrapping paper roll that was in the recycle area, and I pulled it out, and then I wrote the letter, and I put it on the stairs. And then we would take the wrapping paper roll and go, and I can't remember, you might know what one.
French folk song.
Probably so. And then we would go up the stair, da, 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 and then tap it back down. And I think I think it just helped for every aspect of her body to be part of the music, and not just her brain. I mean, just to really feel it and experience. Like the marching was great, and we clap around because sometimes it's hard to sit for a while, and so just thinking about what's going to work for her at that moment, and so we would I just thought that was kind of my job, to figure out
How to be
is gonna
creative.
how to be creative, and what's going to make it meaningful for her.
In the very beginning, and also we did this during Aaron's private lesson, where if he were asked to play a song numbers of times, like 5 times or 6 times, he would get like a little toy in front of him indicating how many times he played that song. And then I did a little bit of that, at home too, but that was in the very beginning. Now, at age 7, Aaron would naturally want to play a song over and over again because he wants to perfect it. He wants to polish it. I mean, I won't even have to tell him. Like after he plays once, twice, I won't even have to urge him to play it a 3rd time or 4th time. He would naturally want to play it a 3rd time, 4th time, because he wants to get good at it. He wants to be proud of it. So it just came naturally through time as well.
And one thing when Mike would come home on Friday, we would have like tip jar night. So because he was so tired, and we were both tired on Friday night, and the girls would play their instruments as if we were at like a bar, and we put out a jar, and we're like, oh, that's great, here, I'll put in something. So we would just get to relax and enjoy their music, and just I don't know, exploring the world.
And what was their response to that? Did
they loved it. They thought it was great. Of course, now Anna's like, really, Mom, a quarter at the time? But they thought it was great.
For those of us who are overachievers and tend toward perfectionism, all of this detail work is not a problem. The challenge for us is really keeping our inner alpha in check and learning to be present with our child in a gentle way. One of the biggest breakthroughs for me as a practice parent is realizing that the child in front of me is growing up as fast as she possibly can, and that my frustration with her is never going to nurture that development.
The hardest thing was, of course, a child wants to imagine or think that their music quality and level needs to be same as what is he hears or he or she hears in the radio as a concerto or a performance quality and level of technique. To not get frustrated during the practice is and continues to be the biggest challenge for me. Do not give up, even though the child is musically inclined. But the frustration part is what's the hardest to tackle.
Their brains are constantly forming new pathways and overriding old ones, because part of developing the cognitive structures that they'll be using in adulthood is choosing which information to save and which information to discard. And that's changing over time as they're kind of observing the world and making sense out of what they see. It is completely not unusual for a young child to forget something that for them was completely basic information that they knew like the back of their hand 4 months ago. In a similar vein, it's totally normal for you to say something 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times, and they'll finally hear you, and they have no idea that that is not the very first time that you've said that. And what's happening is that they are digesting different bits of what you're saying, they're attuning to the task in front of them, they're engaged with the internal dialogue in their brain, they're engaged with whatever's happening in the environment, and there's so many inputs that there's only so much that they can handle at one time. So my job is to remember what the world looks like at the age of 4, and probably they're doing a pretty amazing job with 4 years worth of brain cells. child's biggest source of motivation and primary happiness is the sense that everything she does is helping to generate your positive regard for her and your love. So no matter how many times you say, "I love you," what's really meaningful for her and allows her to actually receive that is her observation that her goodwill and hard work is sensed and appreciated by you.
I think Aaron just sees it and he just senses it, that, Mom spends so much time with me and I need to do well. It's just, he just sees it, that how much of an investment that we put in him, that he knows he needs to do well. So I think for him it's natural. So my husband and I, we don't go out of our way. I mean, we don't constantly praise him or encourage him all the time. He just knows it. It's implied. So.
Be as detailed as you can be when you make corrections, but you want to be in the child's world as you're doing it. Be delighted, be present in the moment where that child's skill level is exactly where it is, and know that that's the perfect place for her to be in. When you make corrections, have it come from a place of curiosity and enthusiasm and excitement for where her playing is going, rather than from a sense that she's falling short in some way.
Both my husband, we have very little musical background. But the thing with my husband is he, for some reason, has a better trained ear than I do. So when Aaron gets a note too high or too low, he would actually pick it up. Shan would pick it up in the other room and he would shout out, "Aaron, I think you need to try that again." So that has been really, really helpful. Because for me, I don't have a trained ear. I depend on the tape on the violin, or I depend on Aaron to tell me, "Mama, I don't think that sounds right." And then I would take out my my metronome, the tuner, and then I would be able to get it to the right pitch. So I rely on that. But Chan, he's fortunate. He has a better trained ear than I do. So we relied on that.